I'll play Molly Hare on it now. The little jig song we always used to play, Molly Hare. Your Jack and the Bean Tree, Beanstalk, I believe is the way they told it back then. Yeah, that's a Jack tale. That's one now that they told so much in this country. Well, now, these here Jack tales, the way they got started and came along back in olden times when they stayed in their log houses, they hoped one another. They'd string beans and the women would come in to help one another. They had no charges. They just hoped backwards and forwards, hoed their corn, the men did. And so their young ones, the children, was making a racket and a crying, and they found it out. One made a part of the tale and one made another. And directly the children got to listening to that, and you could hear a pin drop. And that's the way they got started. When I grew up hearing tales, it was handed down in this country, in the mountains. What caused telling to drop off was the times changed till they got to selling stuff and building up. And each one got to getting out on his own more and not to seeing one another as much to do that way. And they wasn't together, and that dropped it off. Well, the television on that side of it, till they would get tired of it, when they'd first get one in their home, just cut it all out, till they'd get tired of the television kind, and then you could go in their homes and they'd accept the Jack tale. But now, when they first got that television in their home, they were watching their program and hit, then they feeling out of it, 'cause it's strange, and you couldn't tell them no Jack tale till they get wore down on that. 'Cause I know I've told them. But the tale what I learned in my country would be about, I'd say 10 or 15 or 20 Jack tales. I was
right?
Huh? Yeah.
Right.
Amaze and grace. Fairies, I would know nice as I could put it from what my grandfather and one told them to me, and my great-grandfather. The Jack tales could be in this country anyway 200 years old. They said the Hicks has come from England. And so that's what gave them the thought there to get it started talking about it, that they come over from the old country. You know the rest, Dave?
You like to hear Ray tell?
Yeah, I sure do. And my son that got grounded, he loved them so good. He really did enjoy them. Jack was his name, and I guess maybe he liked the stories a little better because it was his name.
You think a new generation will take up the tale?
I think there's so many will. There's so many take up the old songs and the old Jack tales and all.
What makes a lot of that carry on is pondering it. See, now, if I was like a lot of others now, it'd see that, but they don't remember. It's lost memory, that. Take a tater, osh potato, or a wild plant, you'd say. Now say that jacktails was left in one that could tell them. I know of several people in this country can tell a little of out to just individual people, but they can't tell them through like I can. See, I was whaled. Crops now is God's creation, long as it's kept here with the pirates on high. And somewhere in this planet, these seeds that he created is going to repeat themselves, even if they die out in some sections, places. They're going to be repeating it in some other section. Coming up, a bearing seed after its own kind. I've learned it in my life of a wolf. These roots right here will spread. Them joints in it right there, they'll go through the ground. And see that there on it now can come up another bunch of gaywax sprout out of there. And then it'll keep traveling through the dirt. Now that's like Gatton's done. See, that's a little young gaylac, and it's come up there, got started. One I'm fixing to tell now is about Jack when they took him to the army, and he spent 30 years. And at that time, all you got was a suit of clothes and 2 loads of light bread. And they discharged him, and he started home. He come to a little old town, and he met a beggar. And this beggar began to beg for one of them loaves of light bread to eat. So he gave him one. He got on out to the other edge of the little town, and he met another. And so he began to beg. And Jack cut that in half in the middle and gave him half of it, and he got on a little ways from him and got to studying. He cheated that last. And so he run back and overtook that beggar and said, "Here," says, "I cheated you." That beggar says, "How?" He says, "Well, I had 2 loaves. And I met one before did you, and said I give him a whole loaf. And said I run back to give you this other half to make it fair to eat." He says, "Well, being you was wanting to be that fair with people," he said, "I'll just give you some." He said, "Here now's a sack." He said, "If you get in any trouble or anything will bother you," he said, "just say Whickity-Whack, come down in this sack." And he says it'll go down in that. He said, "Here's a drinking glass." And said, "If anybody's going to die, or get it half or third full of water, and with the blubbers, if they stay to the bottom, they're going to die, and if they come to the top, they're going to leave." And Jack thanked and went on. And he come to a little patch of wood, and he heard some wild turkeys a-hollering. Struck his mind. He says, "But Dad," he says, "I believe right here is a good place to try this sack out." And he kept easing out in the woods, and he got pretty close to him, and he squatted down, and he got the sack between his legs, and he looked up at the turkeys. He said, "Whickity-Whack," he said, "turkeys come down in this sack." He said, "But Daddy, it's a sight to watch." He said, 12 big ones stuffed down in there, and he drawed the sack shut, and he slung it across his back. And he went on, and it got to getting dark, getting down night time to him with no supper and no money. He come to another little town, and so he hunted around it, and he found a little restaurant. He went in, he asked the waiter, he said, "Now, I want a place to stay." And he said, "I ain't got no money," but he said, "I've got 12 wild turkeys out here on the porch in a sack." And the waiter said, "Turkeys, 12 wild turkeys?" That was awful, 12 wild turkeys, hard as they was. I said, "You mean you got 12 wild turkeys?" He said, "Yeah, but it had 12 wild turkeys out there in a sack." So the waiter went out and looked at them. And sure enough, they was in there, 12 bags. And they took them in the building and got them out, and And the waiter said, well, we'll keep you the night, give you supper, your bed, and your breakfast in the morning for the turkeys, and give you 15 cents to booze.
Do you think there ever was a Jack?
No, not you'd say, just one special Jack. It just anybody that worked out that way could be a Jack.
Could you be a Jack?
Well, yeah, probably I could make a pretty good if I wanted to do that way. And he left on out then with his sack and drinking glass. And he finally got on in home. And by the time he'd been 30 years in the army, a lot of his people had deceased, and he got around to seeing all the people that was living yet that he remembered, and some he'd forgot he could get to remembering them and knowing them again. And, well, while he was around like that, going around, there's a feller, another man, had two tracks of land. And it's something that got a chant man up on the upper place. He'd killed, a man was dead. He'd buried men till he looked like he wore out. Every man he put up there would be dead next morning, and nobody to tell the tale. And he put out an advertisement if any man anywhere could come and find out what was up there, he'd make him a clear title or clear deed for that tract of land up there, because it was bothering him down on his other place about to run him off. And so Jack heard it, and he got out inquiring and asked him what few he'd meet, and they'd put him on the direct. And finally he met one, he said, just over in the other house. Said where he stays. And he got over there and found him, and he asked him, was that right? And he said, yes, sir, that's right. Said, I advertised that. And so the man took him up there. They looked the house over. Jack took him up to stay there that night. Well, the feller, he went back to the house and got Jack a frying pan and some victuals for his supper. And so Jack fried some meat he brought and fixed him some supper and laid down on the floor to the fireplace to let his supper set. And he hadn't laid there very long till he was taking a kind of a doze, a little nap had started on him. And about that time it woke him back up out of it. He said, and he thought he heard something up the stairs. And he kept listening, directly come down the stairs, and when they come out, it was 6 little black devils, had a sword apiece and a bag of money, and a deck of playing cards. And so they bannered Jack for a game of poker. And he had that dime and a nickel. There's no stores much he hadn't spent it. And so they run the first game out and betted a nickel apiece. And they got Jack's nickel. That left him 2, a dime. And so the second time they beat his nickel and got it. And that left him 1. And he said, but in his mind, he said, but Dad, he says they must be a-seeing my whole cow. He said, I've got to watch close, don't I? I'm gone. So he watched and won that time and got their nickel. And so the second time he won again. And he kept on playing in and out till finally he broke all 6 up. You see, they'll come here, would go to them others, and them tired. They just say, I can't tell you no tale now, you'll have to come back. Well, I tell them when they come, me just plumb give out and feel like I can't do it at all, but when I get started and get the innards, my tiredness leaves, you see. Or my feeling with the key. I want to not mistreat them. Make them maybe feel a little bad about it. And their bags was in. Jack had it off. And they flew mad. they flew mad and began to make at him with a sword apiece. And so Jack had forgot the sack to lean over there in the corner, and then they was a-pressing on him too, all them six on the one with a sword apiece. And Jack was just dodging all that six. Didn't look like he's going to make. And finally he got dodged a little over in the corner, hit his mind about his sack, and he just grabbed it, snapped it quick as he could, said, "Whickity-Whack into this sack," and said, "Sight to see them six devils go down in there." Just sucked to me. And he shed it up. He shed it up, throwed it over in the corner, and went to sleep. Slept good, and the man come up next morning expecting to bury him. He done buried. Everyone tried to stay there. He had to dig a grave and bury him. And so he went on up there, and Jack was a-singing in there. He told him then, he said it was six little black devils come out on him. He said, "Over here they is in the sack." He said, "I'll swear." He said, "That's hard to believe." And he peeked in at him, and he said, "Well," he said, "them scandals," he said, "with all the trouble they give me," he said, "I won't be satisfied till I see them beat up on a hand." And they run a blacksmith shop back at that time. And it was way down in the house. And they carried the sack down there and told the blacksmith man if they wanted him to beat them up. And they said, when he began to beat them on the anvil, there's so many sparks flew out of them that set the blacksmith shop afire and burned it down. Yeah. Well, he made Jack a clear tithe, a clear deed for the place. And Jack began to work there, seeing to the place and raising crops, tending sheep, cattle, and finally, the king of the country, daughter, had got sick and was dead. The doctors had come, and the doctor, and they couldn't cure you, and they had every doctor beheaded because they couldn't cure his doctor. And so he put out an advertisement, if it was any man in the community, anywhere it could cure his daughter, money wasn't a lie, gold and silver. And so Jack got to study. And he got that sack, and he took the drinking glass, and he kept inquiring, and he got to the king's palace. And gosh, he said, all them gold gates are hanging there. He said, but Dad, that was something to look at, that he even had entered the king's palace. And so he hollered, and the king come out, spoke to him, and said, "What are you here for?" And he said, "I'm here with your advertisement, come to give my feelings or what I can do to cure your dog." Well, he says, "Now, young man," he says, "you don't look like probably you could do a job like that. But," he says, "do you know my order?" Well, he says, "What is your orders?" He says, "If you fail," said, "your head comes off the same as the doctor." Well, he says, "That don't bother me." He said, "I'm going to try." So he took him on in. He went in the room where she's in the bed, and he told one of the other kids to go get that drinking glass, about half or third full of water. And they went and got it, come back, and the blubbers shot right to the top and then went back down. She's dying dang night, done gone. And he grabbed the sack right quick and shuffled up again the bed and said, "Oh, pray, Death," says, "come down in this sack." And Death went down in it, and he shed it up, and she come up out of the bed just jumping all over the floor. Well as she ever was. He tied Death up in the sack. And so they all come in a praise. King tried to pay him all that gold, and he wouldn't take nothing. So he went back home, and there's a big pop tree that was growing in the yard. And he climbed that tree and tied that sack plumb to the top of it, high as he could climb. The sack with Death in. And so he got to work in there, and he'd lost memory. Jack had. That sack had left. that sack now with death in it lost his mind. He'd lost memory. And it went on and went on. And they didn't know how, and the other people didn't know how long he'd lived. It'd been 1,000,000 years, or didn't know how long he'd lived. He'd just gone, and nobody couldn't die. He just all lived. And so finally one day, Jack decided he'd walk around a public road. Been there working, decided he'd take a walk. He was getting old too, Jack was. And so he hadn't walked very far, and he heard something coming around that road, rickety-whack, bumpity-bump, rickety-whack, bumpity-bump. And he got right around next to another turn, and here come an old woman, and just went to bones and hide. And her knee joints, she's just all drawn over, and her knee joints was a-squeaking, and her nose was a-bumping her knee, and rickety-whack. Bones go rickety-whack, and then her nose go bumpity-bump. And he said, hello there, ma'am. She said, hello there. Said, I've heard that some blame rascal's got death tied up in a sack somewhere around. And said, I've been wanting to die, seemed like, for 1,000,000 years. Said, I can't die. And said, well, here, said, I'll just look over wet the bones and hide. That's all that's left. Well, that made Jack's memory come back. He went back and got some boys. He is a-bumping pretty bad, too. But he wasn't quite as bad as the old lady was, but he was bumping pretty bad. And he couldn't climb that tree, and you had to go get some younger boys to climb it. They climbed up there, got that sack, and so they brought it down and reached it to Jack, and they said that when he untied it, Jack was the first that fell dead. That tale in the Jack. Whickety-whack in the my sack. And all of the people that's come is named that come that they hold. In my kids or somebody that I would keep this handed down. Studying the creation of our life. The creation, if we could see it and understand, it all means the same thing. Now my body is standing here, and it means the same as that tree. With God, with the Creator that put it here. It grows off. Now my body is growing off, aging, just like a tree. And when it gets there and gets to the right age, it's going to have to divide. But when a young seed then, long as a seed of us here, that's us. That's the way I see it now. Whenever I'm dead, they teach I'm dead. But whenever I'm dead, the human being seed will have to be gone. Because if there are two left here, female and male, it just bears it back, just like this gay-lack. Now that's the gay-lack right there I pulled when I was a little boy. And people says that them's gone. That's the same gay-lack I pulled when I was a little boy. And the same gay-lack it was created. If it was gone, there wouldn't be none of growing here. You see what I mean? If it's gone, there wouldn't be none of growing here. And that's the same gay-lack that I pulled and the people pulled it. Or ever since they've been here on earth. That's the same gay-lack. But if the seed of them was gone, they'd be gone. There wouldn't be none.